3 years ago, Saturday, COVID was officially declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. 3 years later, the virus is still spreading, and the death toll now near 7 million people worldwide. Most people have gone back to living the lives the way they were before the pandemic, thanks to natural immunity and vaccinations. The World Health Organization, though, has yet to declare the emergency over. The White House, however, has. In January, the Biden administration announced that COVID emergency declarations will end on May 11th. Dr. Amy Shadalja is a senior scholar at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Dr. Shadalja, good to see you again. Why do you think the World Health Organization isn't yet ready to say the pandemic is over?
You have to recognize that the world is not on the exact same time frame when it comes to COVID-19, and there may still be work to do in many parts of the world, even though most Western countries have now sufficiently tamed this virus so that it's something more manageable. There's still work, as I said, that other countries need to do in order to shore up vaccines, access to drugs like Paxlovid, hospital capacity. But I do think the World Health Organization does see the end in sight as well.
Doctor, you and I have been talking about this almost since the beginning of the pandemic 3 years ago. My question to you is, did we beat the virus or did the virus beat us?
I don't think you can actually think of an efficiently spreading respiratory virus as something that you can beat. What you want to do is drive it to the milder side of illness where it's not able to crush hospitals. And I think in that sense, humans can declare victory in terms of having vaccines developed in record time that are able to decrease rates of hospitalization, severe disease, death. We've got antivirals, we've got home tests, a lot of tools that we really didn't imagine at the very beginning of this pandemic are now part of our day-to-day life. So in that sense, I do think we've won. But if winning doesn't mean that this virus disappears or magically goes back into bats, it's not going to be eradicated, it's not going to be eliminated, it's going to be endemic, but a much more manageable virus than it was back in December 31st, 2019, when it was first discovered.
The pandemic is still killing 900 to 1,000 people a day worldwide. And yet in Washington, they're still debating where the virus began. Is that the wrong debate to be having, or should we be planning for the next virus?
Well, I think that you can't plan for the next virus without understanding how this pandemic started. Whether this came from a wet market in Wuhan or whether this came from a laboratory accident, both of those active hypotheses have implications for how we prepare for the next infectious disease emergency. If it came from the wet market, we need to understand what animal it was that served as the intermediate between bats and humans, so then we change our interactions with that animal. If it came from a laboratory accident, we have to fortify the biosafety at our labs that are working with dangerous viruses. So I do think this is important to understand, because this is surely not the last coronavirus that we're going to face. And I think understanding how a virus that killed 6 million people around the world first got into humans, I think that's an important scientific and public health question to answer.
Dr. Shadalja, what should people do moving forward? I see the commercials now from the various companies that are hawking their vaccines, but one of the things that they're not saying is whether or not we should get another shot, whether or not we should get another booster. What is the science telling us about what our immunity might be if the last time we got a booster was when the government told us to get one?
It all depends upon who the person is. This is not something that treats every person equally. So I think when it comes to what the boosters do, they protect against severe disease. So boosters are best targeted at those individuals who have a risk for severe disease. So the elderly, the immunocompromised, the pregnant, all of those types of people, as well as those that have comorbid conditions like diabetes, obesity, heart, lung disease. That's where we really find value in the boosters. And I think for other people, the primary series of vaccination does protect you against severe disease, hospitalization, and death. I think what we want is very clear, not one size fits all, but very clear targeted ways to use tools like boosters until we get a better vaccine. And I think that's something that we're hoping to get to. There have been debates about what the interval should be for boosting, but I don't think it's going to be something that can be telegraphed or is going to be completely the same, for example, as it is with influenza, because this is a different virus, and it affects people differently based on their risk factors for severe disease.
When this began, we were washing our hands, we were practicing social distancing, and that was before vaccines. Now that we have vaccines, we have gone through Delta and Omicron, and I understand there are 7 variations of Omicron itself. How concerned are you that there may be another variation out there that could be worse than the first one we were challenged with?
Evolution is not going to stop when it comes to this virus. It's going to continually evolve to be able to get around some of the immunity that vaccines and prior infections provide. But do I think it's going to evolve to be a more severe form? I don't think that favors the virus. I think the virus really wants to be able to infect and spread efficiently. And I think what we'll start to see is more contagious variants, just like Omicron is a more contagious variant versus Delta. And what we'll see is that, yes, it will be able to infect us. Yes, it will be able to get around some of the immunity, but it will not be able to cause severe disease on the scale that the virus once could, because it's dealing with a population that has so much immunity. And immunity, we talk about it like an on or off switch. It's not. It's a spectrum of protection, and protection against severe disease is likely to be intact because we're so experienced with it. And then we also have antivirals like Paxlovid, which work on any of the variants that you talk about.
Dr. Adalja, final question before I let you go. Masks became a political battleground. Is that a good thing going forward, the sense that some people won't wear a mask because they just feel that it is infringing upon their personal liberty, when so many people in so many different cultures wear masks because they are used to seeing viruses spread? So which is it? Should we continue to mask up, or should we abandon the mask altogether?
Well, masks are a tool that decrease transmission of this virus on the individual level. And if you wear a well-fitted mask and you wear it pretty religiously when you're in areas that are high risk, you're going to get a benefit from them. This isn't something that should have been sucked into identity politics, but everything in this country gets sucked into identity politics. So I think that it is important that we use masks judiciously as a tool. And it's not one size fits all, and we shouldn't shame people for wearing or not wearing a mask, but recognize that they are tools that can be utilized. And based on your individual risk tolerance, a mask may or may not be appropriate. And I think that's the way we should have handled this from the beginning. And I think the mask mandates and all of the mask shaming just really triggered a lot of people to think of it as something that they were going to stake their political identity on. And that actually led to more spread and more acrimony and lots of threats to infectious disease and public health experts over mask policy, which should never have even happened.
Producers are going to yell, but looking back, how many lives were lost because of the politics?
I would say the first 100,000 deaths were probably going to happen no matter what. I think after that, it's arguable how many were lost because of politics, because what we see now are many deaths that occurred because people were not getting vaccinated, that they weren't getting boosted, they weren't getting Paxlovid. So I do think that politics magnified what the virus did. I think some of this was unavoidable, but politics really accentuated what a virus that probably has a case fatality ratio of 0.5% could do. And that really shows you that human factors, our political factors, can make an infectious disease much, much worse. And I think that's one of the lessons that we learned from this pandemic, that we don't need to have something with a very high mortality rate for our politicians to actually magnify it. And that's exactly what's happened. I
remember looking back on the Spanish flu and saying it couldn't happen again. It did. Amish Adalja, doctor, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
When we